But it's interesting to see, after these horror few weeks the government has had, obviously after the Voice went down and then all this High Court stuff happened, you had a boatload of people rocked up at the border who made it through Operation Sovereign Borders. It's been a pretty rough time. So leading into Christmas, the government's gone, oh my God, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Get the notes, get the notes. We've got to come up with something to try and get the support of the people back. And they've had this bright idea that they're going to cut migration. Now, they're kind of ignoring the fact that they have led one of the biggest increases in migration this country has ever seen. They create a problem and then they're like, we're going to fix it. Here's Anthony Albanese on the weekend explaining all of this nonsense.
By ensuring Australia can get the skilled workers that Australia needs, but putting an end to any abuse and any rorts. Treasury forecasts show that migration is expected to decline substantially over the coming financial year. The new migration strategy we'll announce this week will bring migration back to sustainable levels.
Now, we'll come back to all of that rubbish in a moment, but at that same presser, I don't know whether Albanese was suffering from a bit of heat stroke or something, but he went a little off kilter.
Can I just conclude as well by saying that today in Sydney and in other parts of the East Coast, it's a reminder that there just might be something in this climate change stuff.
It's a hot day, so there just might be something in this climate change stuff. Mate, the heat you're feeling is the political heat because people out there in voterland have been absolutely tearing you to shreds. And so at the last moment, before Christmas, that the House has risen, they're like, oh, we've got to do something. All right, let's talk about migration numbers. Yeah. So you've led record levels of migration in the last year or so because, of course, during the pandemic, the borders were shut. Yep. So they go, OK, we've got to get the numbers back up to where we wanted them. That's coincided with massive increases in inflation. Then what they essentially come out and announce is that we're going to wind the numbers back a little bit closer to where they used to be. This is not an actual cut in migration. It's simply reducing the numbers from the extreme levels that you've had them at for a while. It's a nothing burn.
This was clearly on the weekend, Operation Change the Subject.
Exactly.
Because Albanese, when he did that presser, he didn't announce anything. He announced that they would be announcing. So he literally fronted the media to say, I will be saying something next week, because he had to say something. They've got so many problems. So it's changed the subject, hence his reference to the weather, because that's another thing they'd rather talk about, anything other than what's going on with detainees, with people breaching our borders, which then doesn't make sense that if they're going to change the subject, then they talk about migration, which really is not that far removed from all the problems they've been having in the first place.
No, but they've looked at what's polling badly, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, with the current cost of living crisis, the housing crisis, etc., people are very aware of the fact you are bringing hundreds of thousands of migrants into the country. We don't even know where they're going to put them. They know that that's polling really badly. So what they're now doing is coming out and saying, oh, we're going to slash it. I think Albo was obviously inspired by the UK, who announced exactly the same thing just last week. Here's the UK Home Secretary, James Cleverly.
And that will deliver the biggest ever reduction in net migration. In total, this package, plus our reduction in student dependence, will mean around 300,000 fewer people will come in future years than have come to the UK last year.
Sounds impressive. And I think the Albanese government was like, well, we need to get our polling numbers up. It is a bit on the nose with people at the moment, this whole immigration thing. The UK just made an impressive announcement. Let's see what we can drum up. Well, here's Judith Sloan from The Australian speaking on Sky earlier this evening, explaining how this may not be what it sounds like.
I think it was extremely underwhelming, James. So they don't want to be seen to advocate Big Australia, but they are still advocating Big Australia.
We know this is the Labor government, so there's no really big slashes They're simply shilling for votes at this point. They're shilling for favour. And so they're going to make it sound like, oh, absolutely, you don't like immigration? Well, we're cutting down the number. Don't worry. Houses for everyone. None of it's true. None of it's remotely accurate.
Well, I think the numbers they came up with is instead of 1.8 million people coming into the country over the next 5 years, there'll be 1.6 million people.
Right.
Now, Claire O'Neill called that a dramatic reduction. It's hardly dramatic. The other funny thing there is Albanese says forecasts show the number of migrants coming into the country will reduce over the next period. Well, the same forecasts showed that it would increase by 235,000 last financial year. It ended up increasing by 510,000. So would you put any stock in forecasts that this government quote?